Howdy folks, welcome to part 6 of the Past Plane series, where I look back at previous planes that I've built or owned or bought or have been given for review. Next one up in the list is the 2 metre wingspan Hobby King Cloud Surfer FPV Pusher Cruiser, I guess it is. I bought this on special from Hobby King back when they used to have decent specials. And the price of it was not much more than the cost of the electronics alone, so I couldn't resist it really. Now this is a big plane designed for long range FPV, can carry a lot of weight, a lot of batteries, a lot of cameras and things like that. And there are some very, very good aspects to this plane and some bad ones as well. The best thing about this plane is its efficiency and glidiness in the air. It can fly forever. Can cruise around on 3.5 amps easily. I've achieved a 1 hour non-stop flight with this using two 26503S batteries. It flies beautifully slowly, has nice big flaps so I can slow it down for landing. Really beautiful wing, I love this wing. About a 10-inch chord, 2 metre wingspan, heaps of lift and great glide. The problem mainly is with the quality of the foam and the fuselage. It's just not strong enough to work with a plane this size and this weight. It came with a clear plastic dome for camera, FPV camera on the front, which I'd never use because I'd never put a camera on the nose behind glass anyway, so I made up a squishy nose cone for it. Worked better for me. It came with a T-tail, which looked fantastic, but the whole assembly was just too weak and flexy. Not enough reinforcing, carbon fibre reinforcing and things like that. So I experimented with this plane a fair bit, changed the wing to rubber band tie down for rough slope soaring landing, put the T-tail down in the normal cross tail configuration, which is much stiffer. I like that a lot better now. Now the big problem with this plane is around the wing saddle area. There's just not enough foam or not enough structure holding it all together. And the first bad landing that I had broke the nose off like that, or cracked it through here. And you can see how much foam that was sort of all that was holding the wing saddle on really. And that's supporting the entire plane because the wing's pushing up on that. There was a motor mount here that I've cut off. Turned it into a pure slope soarer for a little while, which was fun, flew beautifully. It's like a great big pelican in the air, just not tough enough for the landings, I'm afraid. It's a great idea, a great design, just the materials are wrong. That's really all that's wrong with it. It has enormous control surfaces, big servos and pathetic little weak control horns. Weak little clevis connectors, so I made up my own control horns and push rods, which strengthened it a lot. The wing is still fine. I still love this wing. I love the flying characteristics, so glidey, so can fly so smoothly and slowly. I'll use this on another project of some sort, but as you can see the fuselage is pretty wrecked. So I'll save the tail, get rid of the rest of it, build something else. Now the next plane that arrived from GearBest was the Volantex Mini Ranger. That was the 757-4 Ranger from Volantex. And good things about that plane were that the build quality is very nice. The foam's good, all the control surfaces are good, the control rods and control horns are all good quality. It was basically good materials, but it had some serious problems in the air. It was one of the worst planes I've ever tried to fly, and it's meant to be a beginner's plane, but I thought there was no way a beginner would be able to fly it. I was even having trouble. The problem was, it was a pusher setup, unlike this now, and the motor thrust angle wasn't quite right. It was a little bit too shallow, which meant that when you powered up, it pushed the nose down towards the ground, and you had to compensate that with lots of elevator up, so that when you were gliding, when you turned the power off, the plane would loop up into the air. So trying to keep level flight was almost impossible because you'd power up, it would dip down, let go, and it would scoop up again. And it also had terrible adverse yaw. The rudder was sort of too small and too blanketed by the fuselage to be effective, which meant that you would try and turn it. You could have the plane right over on its side and it just wouldn't turn. unless you used heaps of rudder. So it was an absolute dog to fly as it was. Quite a revelation. I didn't think anyone would in their right minds release a plane with those flight characteristics, but who knows the motivation behind selling planes like that. So I came up with some mods. I changed the thrust angle of the motor, just sort of shimmed out the bottom screws a little bit so that the motor was pointing down a little bit, thrust angle was going down a little bit, and that stopped a lot of the driving down under power and looping up under no power. I also mixed in rudder and ailerons so that we had a lot more rudder automatically assisting the turns, and that helped with the adverse yaw a lot. So that improves the flight characteristics of the pusher style Ranger, but I was still a bit bored with that plane, so then I decided to chop it up and make it into a plane that I was really interested in, which was the Tundra, the Hobby King Tundra. I like those style of bush planes, so I thought I'd make the Mini Ranger into a bush plane. So what I did was chopped off the tail and glued it back on up a little bit higher, chopped off the motor mount, put the motor on the nose and made a new nose for it, moved the wheels further forward, cut some very big flaps into it, and this is now a fun plane. I call it the Vundra, so it's like a Volantex Tundra, I suppose. But it's a short takeoff and landing, rugged bush plane style, and it's a lot of fun. I really like this style of plane. So next up, and kind of similar to the Hobby King 2 metre Cloud Surfer, is the Volantex Raptor. Also 2 metre wingspan, also a pusher FPV Cruiser sort of setup. It has the same wing that's used on the Phoenix 2000, having a lot less wing surface area, flies a lot faster, is a little bit prone to tip stalling. If you fly too slowly and try and turn too slowly, it'll sort of drop a wing very badly, but you can recover from it. But if you keep flying at a reasonable speed, this is another very nice FPV Cruiser. The best thing about this plane is the PVC fuselage. Really tough, bulletproof. Still a fair bit of space in there, not as much as the Cloud Surfer. I have caught thermals with this plane, and it's I haven't tried it slope soaring yet, but it'd be a lot tougher and a lot better at slope soaring than the Cloud Surfer for sure. I don't really like the tail. It's a bit miserly, a bit small for this plane, I think. It's okay for the Phoenix, but maybe I think we need a bigger tail on this sort of setup. I did try the Cloud Surfer wing on this plane, and I put some tie-down rods through there. Very easy job to do, and just built it up with some Depron to level out the wing, and that flew quite nicely. That was a nice combination of the tough fuselage and the glidey wing. But this has survived where the Cloud Surfer fuselage is a wreck. So although I probably prefer the flying characteristics of the Cloud Surfer, this one's a tougher plane, a bit more sporty, a bit faster as well. So next on the list was the Dynam Hawksky V2, which is a Bixler 1 style plane, I suppose. And that was just a delight to fly. Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Well, apart from the landing gear. The landing gear was a bit too weak and too far back, so you couldn't land it on grass or take off on grass. But as soon as you took the landing gear off, it turned into just a wonderful, easy to fly, glidey, good plane, good for light FPV and beginners, and just a really, really nice plane. So I'd recommend that to anyone as a first plane. It comes ready to fly version with a transmitter and everything. So Dynam Hawksky V2, very, very nice plane. Interestingly, it has a semi-symmetrical wing too, so it flies inverted just as well as it flies the right way up. Next in line from Banggood was this, what's it called? I've forgotten. The Skywalker 1830, which is an absolute monster of a plane. It's the biggest, bulkiest plane I've ever had. I couldn't put it in my car, which fits most planes, without taking it apart. It has an enormous wing area, what's that, about 10-inch wingspan, 10-inch cord all the way through, 1830 wingspan. Big solid T-tail. This T-tail is plenty strong enough. It's got a nice big carbon fibre tail boom, thick foam, good solid construction. Now this was quite an interesting build because it was a kit, so it came with all the bits disassembled. There's lots of skeleton of plywood to glue together. Very poor instructions, but quite a fun build, a bit like doing a jigsaw really. But it was really too big for my uses. This is designed as sort of a heavy lifting FPV mission flyer, I suppose. It flies very nicely, very slow, glidey, predictable, can lift heavy weights, space to put batteries everywhere. I've configured it a fair bit, more space in there. Now I crashed it quite badly by running into a pole and it ripped the fuselage apart, broke a wing off, did quite a lot of damage. It was actually easy to fix, but I decided that while I'm repairing, I might as well rejig it to be something that's more useful. So I needed to make it a bit smaller so it was easier to transport. I didn't need the enormous size of it, so chopped the wingspan back a little bit. It's now about 1600, made it a bit shorter, and now it fits in the car easily and it's a lot more usable. I put a camera gimbal, a 3D gimbal on the front here so I can do some smooth aerial footage. If you need sort of heavy lifting, long range FPV sort of plane, this is a really good choice. Aerial mapping, that sort of stuff. It's a monster and it's heavy, but it works really well. Interesting plane, a real workhorse. And the final plane I'm going to talk to, also from Banggood, came at the same time as the Skywalker, was this X-UAV One Fpv Cruiser. It's a V-tail, which is an interesting design. It was also a kit version as well, so I had to put my own electronics on there. Now the control horns were really good quality, nice and thick, the way they should be designed, I think. This was a unique design because it had a boom prop, or a prop that rotated around the axis of the boom, and it had a motor with a little gearbox that operated the boom, the prop. Now that's an interesting theory, but it just wasn't well executed at all. You'd need a really finely engineered gearbox to make it work nicely. It was just too vibrating and way too noisy. It was by far the noisiest plane I've ever flown. The noise just really put me off. I just didn't want to fly it, and the big boom prop I thought was just too dangerous. They actually send you a protective glove for launching, which is a bit of an admission that it's a dangerous plane. Had a big chunky fuselage with a plastic two-way gimbal mount on the front. It flew okay, but I really didn't like it. I would have to say it's one of the worst planes I've flown, along with the Mini Ranger to start off with, just because of the horrible noise and the vibrations. So, as is my wont, I decided to rejig it, change it into a slope soarer, and I thought when they offered me this plane, the first time I saw it, I thought, oh yeah, I'll do the review, then I'll change it into a slope soarer. It just looks like a fast slope soarer. So that's what I did. I sliced off the bottom half of the fuselage and the nose, made a nose out of Corplast and this red tape, just big enough to fit a battery in the nose. Lightened it up as much as possible, took the motor off and the prop off the back there. And this now has become my best performing slope soarer of them all. This is absolutely awesome on the slope. In the lightest winds, I've had it flying in just over 3 knots, and I'll show you some video of that. And I've had it out in 30 knots as well. It can just handle it all. It's tough construction. It's got a tough, big carbon fibre boom, carbon fibre and fiberglass skeleton inside, really solid wing. It's reasonably heavy at about 1 kilogram, but it's got the wing surface area to carry it, which means that it's just awesome on the slope. In light wind, it seems to, with its own speed, it generates its own lift. So I can just keep cruising through the lulls and find the next bit of lift. In heavy winds, it just penetrates beautifully. You can load it up with as much weight as you want, just by stacking extra batteries in there. This really is my favourite slope soarer. It's absolute beauty. Gone from the worst plane to the best plane in my fleet, I think. Okay, that'll do it for this session. Coming up in the next one, what do we have? We start getting into some warbirds then, and the seaplane as well. Okay, thanks for watching.